Hey everybody, welcome to Blue HQ, and I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I've gotten a lot of comments and questions over the years about dive watches, and I'm a bit of a watch nerd, so I thought it would be fun to do a series of videos about dive watches. And so the first video, here it is. Welcome to the first video. The first video is I want to talk a little bit about my history with dive watches. Just share some fun stories. And then, you know, later in this, I'm going to talk more about other aspects of dive watches, like things like what makes a good dive watch, who makes good dive watches, you know, stuff like that. For today, though, I'm going to talk about the history, my personal history with dive watches. So when I first got scuba certified, they had come out with dive computers. And so the era of the dive watch being like a really important piece of equipment for scuba diving was coming to an end. You didn't need to time your dive and look at a dive table in order to know how long you could stay. We had a dive computer that had a pressure sensor so that it could tell you how deep you were, and it could calculate based on your depth how long you can stay. And the nice thing about that was, you know, if you did a multi-level dive, you got credit for the time you were shallow. In the early days with dive tables, you know, you had to plan your dive based on the deepest part of your dive and then look at the table, figure out how long you could stay, and you needed that dive watch to time the dive. So, you know, once dive computers were out and I got certified, you know, it wasn't like I needed to have a dive watch. I spent my money on my scuba gear, my camera gear, I didn't have the money for a dive watch if I didn't really need it. But what's interesting is that I've always loved watches. So I've worn a watch since the 4th grade when I got my first watch for Christmas. It was a little digital watch. Digital watches were kind of new and fancy. And I had this watch, you know, you push the button and it was an LED. It would show you the time for like 5 seconds and then it would go away because that saved the battery. And I got my first, what I would consider a real watch for Christmas when I was 15. And it was a Seiko chronograph, a quartz watch. I'm not a lover of quartz watches that much these days, but to me at the time, that was a real watch. It looked like the one my dad was wearing, and I loved it, and I still have it, and I wore it for a lot, like, I don't know, like 10, 15 years. And when I got certified to dive, that was the watch I was wearing, but it wasn't a dive watch. It was just a watch. And I feel naked without a watch. So I would wear this watch like all the way to the shore dive or to the boat dive or wherever. And then I would have to take it off and put it in my pocket and, you know, change into my bathing suit or whatever. So I didn't actually dive with the watch. So I didn't get a watch I could dive with until I came upon one by accident, and it was this watch. It's a Citizen. It's a quartz watch, but it's an analog digital combo. Uses a battery, and as you can see, the battery is dead because this watch hasn't run in a long time. But it has a little pressure sensor on the side, and so it tells you the depth you're at on the digital gauge. And it was smart enough to know that when it sensed pressure, it knew you were diving, so it would start a dive timer at the bottom and tell you your dive time. So you didn't need a rotating bezel to time your dive. But it still had an analog display of the time, which is kind of cool. Well, in any case, I was on a dive in Bonaire, and this was, I don't know, mid-90s, early 90s, and I was on the house dive at Captain Don's Habitat, and I was using my flashlight to just look in cracks in the reef. I was looking for fish, critters, whatever, and something was shiny. And I reached in there and pulled out this watch. And what was interesting was that the dive timer was running, and it showed that the watch had been underwater on a dive for 12 hours. So whoever had lost it was probably still around. So at the end of the dive, I took this to the dive shop, And I told the dive shop, I didn't show them the watch. I told them that I had found a watch on the house reef, and if anyone is missing a watch, if they can identify the watch to me, they can describe the watch, then obviously it must be theirs and I'll give it back. But if they can't describe the watch, obviously it's not their watch. So I was going to keep the watch unless the owner came forward. And we actually put a sign up. I asked around, is anybody missing a watch? We could not find the owner of this watch. So I think that the universe just wanted this watch to be mine. And I wore it for 2 or 3 years until the battery died. And then I never got a new battery for it. I should probably do that. In any case, it's kind of a cool watch. But here's another interesting story. So I went to school and actually played in a rock band with a guy named Tom Gref. And he was in a punk band called Dead Men on Holiday. And this band was, all the guys in the band were really good friends of mine. And I went to all their gigs, and I was in a different band, and they came to our gigs. And then once in a while, we traded people, and I sang for them on one of their gigs when their singer couldn't make it. And it was fun. And Tom was a mechanical engineer, and he graduated from the same school as me, obviously Worcester Polytech. And he went out into the world and got a job, and in his spare time, he got really interested in old watches. He started buying watches at like garage sales and stuff and taking them apart and figuring out how they worked. And after a few years, the guy's so smart that like he could look at this complex mechanism of a watch and like figure it out. And after a while, he got so good at fixing watches that he decided to do a little side business fixing watches. And then a few years after that, he said, you know, I'd like to take the test and see if I could become a certified master watchmaker. And you have to understand that there's only about like 120 people in the world that are certified master watchmakers. The test is really hard. They hand you like a pile of watch parts and they say, make it work. But the worst part is some of the parts are missing. So you have to know, you have to figure out which parts are missing and you have to fabricate them. And that will allow you to become, among other things, there's a written test, I guess. It's complicated. It's really hard to become a certified master watchmaker. And so that's why there are so few of them in the world. And he now is one. And a few years after that, he said, you know, I'd like to launch my own brand. And so he actually did the CAD design and designed a whole bunch of, I think like 5 different watches. A chronograph, a pilot's watch, and a dive watch. And I have one of the very first dive watches that he made. It's called the Oceanic. It has a manta ray on the back, and a stainless steel bezel, and an ETA movement inside. I forget which movement is in it. ETA is a Swiss movement. They're a big company that makes movements for a lot of watch companies. They're owned by the Swatch Group, which also owns a dozen high-end watch brands that you've heard of, like Omega, Longines, a few others, Glashütte. Any case, this has an ETA movement in it, and it was assembled at his shop in Arizona, but here it is. And you probably saw this on a ton of videos. He calls the company Thomas Gref Watch. I think you can still buy one of these. I think he only got enough parts to make like 300 of them. He had like 300 cases made and 300 dials and 300 bezels and 300 crowns. And so I think you can still buy one of these on his website. Most of his other watches are sold out, and good luck getting one. They're highly collectible, very valuable. But he did not sell these for a lot of money. I think like $1,200, something like that. And I wore this watch for more than 10 years. You've seen this watch in a bajillion Blue World videos. And at one point, I actually broke it. I forget what I did. I caught it on something and I broke the bracelet. And I sent it back to have it fixed. And while I was having it fixed, he did a tune-up, took it apart, cleaned it, lubed it. And he sent it back all beautifully repainted. The bezel was all repainted, and I promptly wore all the paint back off of it again. So this watch has been on a lot of dives. But one of the things about a lot of dive watches, including this one, that bother me is I like to wear my watch underneath my wetsuit, like just under the edge of my wetsuit. And so like this watch, just like most dive watches, when you wear it underneath a wetsuit, because I wear my dive computer on the outside of my wetsuit, and I like to, when I hold my camera like this, I like to point my dive computer towards me. So my dive computer is not up here, it's down here. It's on the back of my arm, so it doesn't interfere with my watch. And you might say, if you have a dive computer, why do you need a watch? Can't you tell time? Yes, you can. A dive computer has the time in it if you've remembered to set the time in it, which I always forget to do. But because I like to have the critical information on the top level page, I actually have to scroll a couple pages through the menus to find the time, and that's a pain. It's actually a lot faster just to pull back my wetsuit and just look at the time and put it away. And so I like to have my watch there. And the other thing that I like about wearing a watch underwater is I don't have to find some place to put it before the dive. You know, it's on my wrist all day. I need my watch to tell time. I already said I feel naked without my watch. And when it's time to go diving, I just put my wetsuit on and I go. And I don't have to worry about the watch. And that's another thing I love about dive watches. So in any case, it's under the edge of my wetsuit. And what happens is it pushes it down against your wrist. And when you go like this, which I'm doing a lot when I'm holding a camera, when you go like this, the crown digs into the back of your hand. And I had, for years, I had a callus on the back of my hand. I had like a thickening of skin in response to constantly being crunched by the crown of the watch. And I finally, I was looking at dive watches, as I tend to do, and I came across this one. This is a Seiko. Now, Seiko makes quartz watches, and they also make mechanical watches, and they make some of the nicest movements, mechanical movements in the world. Everyone thinks only Switzerland makes good movements. That's not true. Japan makes good movements. And believe it or not, China's getting pretty good at movements too. It used to be like, oh, Chinese brands are just junk ripoffs, but actually they're getting pretty good at it. They make some pretty good movements. So this Seiko, what I really loved about it when I saw it, first of all, it's got the turtle case, which is just cool. It's kind of big and kind of squarish, and I don't know, just looks kind of neat. The crown is down here at 4 o'clock. It's not at 3 o'clock, it's at 4 o'clock. And what that means is that when it's on my wrist, it doesn't bite into my hand. It's just offset a little bit, and it doesn't bite into my hand. I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I love the feel of it. It's kind of heavy and weighty and beefy. And you know, because it's a mechanical, I should mention, when I say mechanical watch, I mean, you know, it's got a spring. It works on spring power. It doesn't need a battery, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But there's two kinds of mechanical watches. You have the kind you have to wind, like old school, and then there's what they call an automatic watch. This is an automatic watch. These are actually all automatic watches except for Mr. Battery Powered here. In an automatic watch, there's basically a weight in there, and it's basically almost like a little pendulum. It's a weight mounted in the middle of the back of the watch, and when you move your wrist, it twirls around by its own weight, and so it's like, you know, twirling something around on a string. But this weight, when you just do your normal, I mean, if you're me, I gesture a lot, so my watches get wound. So they wind themselves through your natural motion, and they call that an automatic movement. And what's cool about that is that as long as you wear it every day, or at least every other day, because they have a power reserve of a couple days if they're fully wound. As long as you wear it every day or every other day, you never have to wind it. You never need to put a battery in it. It just always keeps time. It's awesome. So that's an automatic watch. So this is an automatic watch. And what I also liked about this, besides the 4 o'clock crown, was the fact that this uses the Seiko 4R36 movement, also known as the NH36. It is a movement that has not just the time and the date, but it also has the day of the week. And it is correctly set right now to Thursday. Why is that important? everybody knows what the day of the week is. You would be surprised. When I'm on a dive boat, off the map, off the grid, diving every day, by about the third day, I forget what day it is. And maybe you don't really need to know what day it is, but you're probably thinking, I leave on Saturday. How many days do we have left? What day is today? Oh, it's Thursday. Okay, I only have another day of diving after today, and then I leave on Saturday. Or you might think, oh, I got to call home. Wait a minute, what day is it today? Does Christine have chorus tonight? Can I call her? You know, so knowing what day of the week it is sometimes is very handy, and I forget when I'm on a boat. Actually, I forget all the time. Just in a normal day, I forget what day of the week it is, but it's really handy to look at your watch and it just tells you. Now, does my phone tell me that? Yes, but I don't always have my phone, especially on a dive boat. My phone's usually in the cabin. But my dive watch is always on me. So I loved that feature. So that was a pretty cool feature. So I started wearing this Seiko, and I feel bad, Tom, because I love your watch. But the Seiko with the 4 o'clock crown and the day of the week, that was like a no-brainer. So I started wearing this watch. Then I came across another version of it, and this one was true love. So this is the watch you've seen me wearing for probably the last, I don't know, 10 years on Blue World. So this was like the first 10 years, and this was the next 10 years. Yes, we've been doing the show that long. This watch is the same as this other Seiko in that it's got the Super Turtle case, it's got the 4 o'clock crown, but it has a magnifier on the day. This one also has the date and the day. So it has both of those pieces of information, just like that other one. But it has a magnifier. And you know, a magnifier is really handy when you're my age because it's a lot easier to read. Now, it should be noted that the magnifier doesn't really do that much underwater because the index of refraction of water is very similar to the index of refraction of the sapphire crystal that's the front of this. Not exactly the same. So it works like a little bit, but not as much as it works in air. In air, it magnifies a lot. But honestly, I don't need to know what date it is when I'm underwater. I really only need to know the time. So I don't really mind that it doesn't work underwater. But in air, man, the magnifier is so awesome. I can see, I can see the watch. But the second thing about this one is it has a graduated blue dial with little manta rays on it, and it spoke to me. And this was a limited edition they only made for 1 year. It says special edition on the back, and I forget the model number. But I liked this watch so much, I bought one for cameraman Todd for his 50th birthday. And by the time my son wanted one, when my son turned, I think, 17, I got him one of these for his birthday. But by then, they were no longer in production, and I had to hunt one down on eBay. So they're getting a little bit hard to find. But this was not an expensive watch. They were like $500, which I know that sounds like a lot of money, but for a dive watch, that's cheap as dirt. And this watch is rated to 200 meters. Honestly, most people will never dive deeper than 50 meters. I know I can count on, one or two hands the number of people that, probably one hand, the number of people that I know that have actually been to 200 meters underwater. And those are some very serious technical divers. So this watch will go plenty deep enough for 99.9% of all scuba divers. Some watches are rated even deeper than that. At that point, it's just bragging rights. Unless you're going to strap it to a submarine like James Cameron, 200 meters is plenty for a dive watch. So this is the watch that I've been wearing the most of late for the last 10 years. But I have experimented along the way with a few other watches that I thought I would mention. They're like honorable mentions. I bought this watch from, I got it used on eBay actually. I bought this watch a few years ago. It's made by Ball. And what I really liked about it was the fact that it has this cool little clasp that holds the crown down. I just thought it was neat. But the big thing about this watch is it's what they call a GMT watch. GMT stands for Greenwich Mean Time, and there's a whole history behind what that is from, which I'm not going to go into, maybe in another video. But to make a long story short, it's a watch that has 2-hour hands, so it can tell the time in 2 different time zones at the same time. And what's cool about that is you can have one of them set to time at home and one of them set to local time. So when you fly to the Philippines for a dive trip and you land, you set the watch to local time for you, so you know what time it is. But the second hour hand that's on there shows me what time it is back in Massachusetts at home, so I don't have to do math. Like, can I call Christine right now? Can I call my son? Is he in school? What can I do? And you have to do math. You go like, oh, it's 10 hours difference. So let's see. I take the time it is now, I convert that from AM to PM, and then I add 2 hours, and then that'll be the time at home. If it's just on the watch, it's really handy. They probably make an app for the phone, but again, you don't always have the phone with you, so it's kind of handy to know what time it is at home. So a GMT function is very handy. But it doesn't have the day. It only has the date. And this is another brand I picked up recently that I think makes pretty nice dive watches for a very reasonable amount of money. This is a company called OceanEva. It's a boutique brand, sort of a smaller brand. This is also a GMT watch that has 2 different time zones. And this one's rated to, I don't know, like 1,200 meters, some ridiculous amount. And in order to do that, it has a domed sapphire crystal on the top, which is nice, but it doesn't have a magnifier, so the date can be a little hard to read, if you know what I'm saying. But one of the things I liked about this watch, the reason that I bought it, is it's titanium. And a titanium watch is super, super light. Super light. So I just thought it would be fun because I didn't have any titanium watches to get a super, and I wear this watch a lot, actually working around the house. It's been on some dive trips, but I wear it a lot working on the house because it's nice and lightweight. But I let my son Liam try it on, and he said, it feels cheap. I'm like, why does it feel cheap? He was like, it doesn't have enough weight. And that is the thing about titanium. Like, it's so light, it almost feels like it's not quality because it's not heavy. But the reality is, it is quality. This actually has, I believe, a Seiko movement in it, the NH34, which is a Seiko GMT movement. It keeps very good time, and it's automatic self-winding, and it's a GMT, so it's got 2 time zones. So pretty nice watch, and I've worn this one a little bit too. So those are the 6 watches that are sort of my history of dive watches. And I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to do some more videos about some other aspects of dive watches coming soon. And I hope you'll tune in. I'm going to put some links down below in the description to where you might want to check out some of these watches and what they are. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comments, fire them at me. And I'd also like to point out that I'm wearing my Call of the Dolphins t-shirt. It's our new giant screen film. Just now opening up in theaters all around the world. Just opened in Stockholm, Sweden. Just opened in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. So keep an eye out for it. Call of the Dolphins. And more videos always coming your way. New Blue World episodes, more adventures. We're not going anywhere. I know we miss a month now and then because we've been busy with some other projects, but rest assured, we're not going anywhere. So thank you for joining me, and talk to you next time.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest episode all the way to the end. You're crazy if you don't subscribe. Hit that subscribe button now so you won't miss our next episode.